Hey guys, I'm FatBuddyCat, and this is how I rebuild a mini bike. I need another mini bike like a hole in the head. But for your entertainment and my lack of ability to make quality life decision leads us here. Let's do the best we can. When I see a good deal on a Coleman BT200X, it's really hard for me to walk away from it. I picked this bad boy up for $375. Everything works, sort of, but there's a couple things that are in need of serious repair. I mean, like now. Can you see the fork move? It's kind of hard to do with one hand. Well, we're just going to get down to the nitty-gritty. Since it really can't be ridden, we might as well repair it. Besides the neck bearings being completely blown out, we have a reverse wired kill switch. Check it out. The choke lever's missing. Every time you touch the handlebars, you can feel the fork move. Fire's right up. Completely cold. See what I'm saying? So, there's that. The throttle. I don't know what's going on here. There, it's stuck. No, it's not. Alright, something is no good, probably the cable. I'm not a big fan of running these stock linkages anyway, especially with the governor. Speaking of, we're probably going to keep the governor. We're going to do this as more of a stock-ish rebuild. The engine's going to come off, the jack shaft's going to come off, the jack shaft's going to go back on. We're going to use a 62 sprocket. And I'm going to change the plastics. I know it has this wicked sweet headlight going for it, but it really doesn't when you get down to the nitty gritty. I'm not sure that the coils, you know, these have those little mummified glow bugs in them, so the flywheel spins around and pisses them off and they make a spark. I don't know if it's strong enough for that bulb. And it's definitely going to be some sort of a draw there. So all the plastics are coming off and I'm removing the engine right now. I have all my plastics off, including that headlight, jack shaft cover, 2 fenders. It only took me a 10mm wrench and a pair of scissors. Kind of weird. It's because the headlight was only zip tied on. Beautiful. I also removed both of the chains. That's the one that's on the jack shaft. the rustier of the two. I don't think anything's been serviced here, so I'm probably going to have to address that as well. Easiest thing to do from here is to remove the throttle housing and kill switch from the handlebars, and then cut any zip ties, or in this case tape, that might be holding them to the frame. You have one bolt on the jack shaft right here, and 4 holding the engine onto the frame. I get all of those off, and then take this whole thing, wires and all, and put it right up there on the workbench. Let me show you something, kid. On your throttle housing, you have this flat surface. They all do. You ever wonder why? This flat surface is supposed to mate up against this flat surface on the back of your kill switch. When your switch is properly installed, off and on, you can read them. The wire will come out on this side. That way you have that flat spot. I already loosened these 2 screws. This is completely free. Look it. That's as deep as it can go. Let's loosen this screw on the kill switch. Pull it out. And now, check that out. They almost look like they're meant to come together. These 2 screws on your housing are to hold it in place. They are not meant to clamp this throttle to the handlebars by themselves. You got to line it up. Look at, they even offset the screws so you can get to them. Pretty neat, huh? So, if you're riding your bike and you go to twist your throttle, this is very important for guys who are running your stock linkages with your governor, because it can be a stiff throttle. You pull back, it starts to move the entire housing. Check if your kill switch is lined up, and make sure that that clamp is tight as well as this one. I'm trying to keep everything together. That way the installation process goes a lot smoother. I rolled the mini bike outside. I have my engine, jack shaft, cable still attached, right up on the workbench as promised. It's raining out and I have to clean this piece of linoleum off anyway. I think I'm going to set it on my shed floor. Super clean. Here's what it does. This is the foam version. I use this on a lot of my projects. I haven't even wet it down yet. You can. It's raining out today. There's a lot of moisture in the air. Hopefully this stuff will just hang out a little bit longer. It'll break down and it'll liquefy. Well, it won't actually liquefy, but it'll look like it's liquefying the majority of the grease and grime. I could have washed it first, giving it a little bit of an advantage. But really no need to. I'm just spraying it on every single area that I'm going to be working. Let that do its thing, and about 10 minutes I'll come out and hose her down real thorough. You don't even have to give it the super blast, just a good mist in the dirt. Flies right off. It might not get all of it the first time around. This thing is pretty nasty. But it's definitely going to be a lot better to work with. Before. There's some stuff that's just it's kind of like in the paint. See how it's got like faded areas in it. It's like we had some chain rub. Yeah, I think one pass will do it. I just removed the umbilical cords and the throttle linkage. We have a stretched out spring here. That's not good, so we'll have to replace that. Now I'm going to be removing the carburetor and then the gas tank. There's a reason I do this one first. I didn't get far before this update. This isn't the reason I removed the carburetor, but just a little something I found. No wonder the choke lever's missing. This is on backwards. This adapter goes the other way. Oh yeah. She's a crusty stock job, alright. I just pulled back this clip on the fuel line. Pulled it up a little bit with my pliers. I have a choke lever. Can you see that? Sort of. I'm going to pull the fuel line up. I'm pinching it with one hand. Now I'm going to grab that choke handle with the other. It's got a little phallus on it. That goes right into the fuel line. And then you can pull a little clamp right back down onto it. That way you don't have any gas leaking out. Now I'm going to remove the fan shroud. I'll pull that off, or to remove the bolts for the tank. And I'll take that and this outside for the super clean treatment. With the tank and the fan shroud out of the picture, I'm now just going around and continuing my disassembly. I remove the header, carburetor, all the gaskets. This whole thing's coming apart right down to the block. Flywheel, head, all of it. The only thing I'm worried about is keeping my governor armature intact. I have to remove the rest of the sheet metal if I want to get the head off of the block. I can't remove the sheet metal until I get the jack shaft out of the way. If you get the jack shaft out of the way, that means you gotta get the clutch out of there too. It's a 10 millimeter. I'm going to put a socket on the end of it. I'm going to hold that with one ratchet. And then I'll be over here with my extension and a 19 millimeter on the flywheel nut, holding another ratchet. And just loosen it. This is just about the only time you'll see me use an impact gun around one of my engines. I just use it to blow off the flywheel nut. That's it. I'm going to have to use the bang bang orangutan method for this. It's just a flat bar and a heavy hammer. I hate doing it this way, but let's just get it over with. The nut goes back on. That way you hit the nut, you don't hit the end of your threads. Little flat bar. Get that up behind here somewhere. Pry outward, I guess. There it goes. Didn't hit it too hard, just hard enough. Didn't mean to send that flying. Got ourselves a flywheel now, though. With the flywheel removed, I just tapped the woodruff key out, ball peen hammer, flathead screwdriver. It was an easy one. If you have a difficult one, then you can go over to Grey Goat Garage. He's got a really cool video where he removes one, like, he makes it look like butter. Anyways, I also nabbed the lighting coils, all the hardware, put it in a bag. These are in really good shape, so I'll keep these for in case I ever need them. Same thing with the matching flywheel. This is in really good shape. It can be reused. 4 10 millimeter bolts. We'll get the jack shaft off with a couple 8 millimeters that are holding that sheet metal on. I'll get those next, that way I can remove the head. My pile of parts is really starting to grow now. That head is looking a little bit grody. The gasket's seen better days too. The cylinder has a little bit of discoloration going. I can't feel anything with my fingernail if I go lightly over it. We'll see about the piston when it comes out. I'm going to take the oil fill off, dump the majority of the oil out, and then just remove the side cover and pour it out. Be a lot quicker than waiting for it to come out one of the drains. It actually only has one drain on the rear. Nice. Nothing seems to be touched. The gasket came right off in one piece. I'm going to be swapping out this plastic cam, that 16mm shaft, and we're going to replace the rod. We're leaving the governor in, remember. We might run into a little issue with our crankshaft. Let me get the connecting rod out. These are just 9 foot-pounds. I can just get a wrench in there and back those bolts off, pull the cap, send the rod out, and then yank the crank. I think the only thing I can reuse, I might not even reuse it right now, but at another point, would be the wrist pin and the 2 clips. This piston definitely has some wear. If I can get it in focus, you can see that the rings do too. That could account for the excess oil on top of the piston, the head, and the head gasket. Governor's in there. I didn't move anything on the armature. There's one more thing I want to do to this block, and then I'm going to clean it. I'll get rid of some of these parts. The only thing I'm going to keep on the bench is the crank. The name of the game here is to turn my galley hole right there, the little one in the middle, into a pilot hole for this big long 1/4 inch drill bit. We're going to bore that sucker right out. I'm going to be really careful. The reason I use that long bit is so that I can stand back and keep the cutting edges away from the face or surface of my block, specifically the top of the deck where your head gasket's going to go. You don't want to ming that up. This one's like new, so I'm going to try to keep it that way. This might seem excessive, but it's really not. It's a good practice. I'm just going through aluminum, so I'm not rushing it. There we go, nice and straight. Back right out of there. Don't try to hone it out with the drill. That's why they make round files. I'm going to clean up my hole, make sure I don't have any burrs, and then it's going to be time to clean the block. This block was extra filthy, so I gave it a pre-rinse around to the Super Clean, And now I'm going back with just a little bit more of the product and an old toothbrush so I can reach those hard to hit spots. I didn't find any acorns this time around, but there's a lot of gravel. Once I was satisfied with the cleanliness of my block, I came inside and dried it out the best I could with my shop vac. I then doused the bearing with motor oil to the point that it was overflowing. Spun it around a couple times and then collected the excess with a paper towel. Took the brake clean to it and forced out all of that dirty oil. I then rinsed it with water, blew it out real good with the hose, brought it back inside, shop vac again, and then I lubricated that bearing. So now it spins really nicely. Like, real nice. I'm going to dry the cylinder out and then hit it with some oil right away. I'm using a max stroke 3/4 inch GX200 replacement crank. It doesn't come with a governor gear, so I was going to use the one that came off of the stock 16mm shaft that was on this engine. It came off alright. I threw some heat at it and then banged it with my little hammer there, and it did the trick. Cleaned it off real quick, and then I placed it over the max stroke crank and I heated it up a little, and I tried to bang it with my hammer, and well, it just kind of flopped on there without really beating on it. But then when it cooled down, it wasn't sitting flush. It kind of like stayed expanded somehow. And I think that is because I heated it up too much and I warped it. Actually, it was probably a combination of me heating it up and then hitting it with the hammer just hard enough. Either way, there's not a chance that I can use that. So I have a choice to make real quick before we go forward here. This is going to take me a minute. For what it's worth, I have better engines already built and better blocks to work with. I'm just going to go ahead and remove the governor mechanism. I'm still going to use a factory-like linkage. I want to get this hockey stick out of here as well. I just made a mark up here on this armature it's in line with this thing. I think it has to do with the way this clip goes on, and it lines this back up. I don't want to screw that up. I did that before and I had an issue, so hopefully that solves it. I'll drop it down in when it comes out. I'm going to end up cutting it off somewhere right about there. There'll be a hole here from where I punched the dowel out. I'm going to seal that with a 1/4 bolt and some red Loctite. I just cut my hockey stick off right at the curve. I used my angle grinder and then touched it up with my flat file. Somehow I ended up with these 3 washers and one more that is slightly larger, but they all have the same inside diameter. I'm going to stick 3 of them on this part, and then I'm going to stick it through the hole. So 3 of them will be inside of the block, and this one will be on the top. Then I'll add my clip. Once you put that clip on the shaft, it returns it to the factory position. It can't go any further left. It can only go to the right. Now, I just have to line up my mark and then tighten my nut and bolt. It looks and feels right. I'm going to rock with it. Next, we're going to need a connecting rod and piston for the crank. This is very much going to be a stock modified build. We're doing a 3/4 crank swap. It has a brand new journal. If we took a piston that has already been rotating around another crank, chances are it's opened up a little bit. If we set that at the 109 inch-pounds on this crank, then there could be a little bit of play. We remove the governor. We want things to be tight and right. I'm going to use a brand new stock rod. This one came in a rebuild kit that I got from my friends at OMBWarehouse.com. It came with all the gaskets you need, new valves, some green springs, and the connecting rod with an Autolite racing plug. We're going to take it a step further and use a Honda UT1 flat top piston and some skinny rings. These are factory Honda parts. Alright, you might find them on a GX160, maybe on a GX200. I'm not sure what they're running them in from the factory, but these are stock parts. Alright, so somebody figured that this rod, because it's the same one that goes in a GX160 or a GX200, this might not be genuine, but they know that this rod can handle whatever compression comes off of that piston. They might have a governor involved. We don't. But, we do have a better flywheel. All right, so I'm not being reckless there. We're going to replace the plastic cam with a Wildcat 223 stock cam. This came from my friend Jay Straponi. And, man, I've been holding this thing for like a couple months now, waiting to find something to use it on. So, here we go. It's like new. He upgrades things pretty quick. So, we're going to put it to use in here. Nothing crazy. Maybe a little bit more than the 196 cam and lift. But it's not a 265 or anything. We're going to have a stock carb on here. I'm going to do something different with the head. I'm going to, I'll just show you, use a 14cc. This is a GX160 head. So again, this is a factory available part that got paired with this piston and that rod. We're just going to push a little more RPM. To protect our valves, we're going stainless. I already have billet retainers installed. These are split style. The only thing I might have to change is my spring pressure. You see down there, there's some, it looks like dots. I think they're lines. I want to say those are yellow. I had this on my Coleman BT200X. Yeah. And I ran that with a modified governor, probably like 5,000 RPM or so, with this head. And I think I used some sort of box stock springs. So they're not 18s or 22s, but they might be more than 10.8. I'll have to check. If I can't figure it out, I might order new ones. I don't want to go crazy on the spring pressure. We're going to be limited by the carb in the cam. I don't know. Maybe we'll throw a tachometer on this one. We'll see how it goes. We'll be all right. I have my rings installed and the orientation set where I like them to be. I can actually move that oiler ring over just a little bit more. I didn't keep the gaps together on those, so that's a little bit tricky. None of them line up. I'm not over the wrist pins. That little mark right there, just pretend that's an arrow facing down. I ended up having a brand new wrist pin. It was with the bearings that we're going to be installing on the wheels, and I also have some neck bearings to fix that issue. Wait till you see how bad they are. Alright, so I'll lube this up. My rings are lightly lubed. I'll lube them up real good. I'll take the cap off the rod, stick the crank in, and then I'm going to hand lower my piston, so my piston will go down inside and I'll set the rings with my fingers. My piston is in the hole. Well, the cylinder anyway. It's going to come up pretty close to the deck, not flush by the time we're done. I lowered it down onto the crank journal before I put the crank in. I lubed up that bearing on the far side real good. Now I'm going to lube the journal. There we go. And I'm going to lubricate each of those bolts before I set them in the cap. This is going to get torqued to 109 inch-pounds. I'll juggle between the two, bringing them up. I'll probably start at like 50, 80, and then I'll just go for the 109s. Just like any other part that goes into one of my engines, whether it be new or used, these GX200 196 lifters are going to get thoroughly cleaned and lubricated before being installed. Besides having a metal sprocket, the possibility of a little more lift and comparable duration, the big biscuit here with the Wildcat 223 cam is that it shares the same GX200 journals. So this should be a direct drop-in fit. I'll line up the timing dots and then apply my camshaft installation tool, give it a spin, and make sure nothing's bottoming out. I just set my flywheel on this crankshaft temporarily so that it makes spinning the engine a little bit easier. This bolt isn't tight. I don't foresee any issues, so I'm just going to hold it with my fingers and give it a spin. Oh yeah, she's smooth. It's like hot butter. Line up the timing dots. Coming around. Right there. And come up top. Take a look at the piston to see where we are in relation to the deck. Just by eyeball, and say we're going to be all right with our skinny gasket. I'm a big fan of running a vented side cover. I modified this one not too long ago and ran it with a fresh bearing and seal for maybe 2 or 3 hours tops. Don't worry about all that buildup of JB Weld. I just tried to smooth it out and make it look the best I could. This is what it is. I know it works, and it's going to work again. The issue I'm running into is that I am down to my last crank shim. You use these in unison with your side cover gasket to set the end play on your crank. This rebuild kit from OMB Warehouse came with 2 gaskets. The green one is thicker than this gray one. The one in the middle is a used one that was the same thickness as this green one until it was compressed. I'm going to try running that shim with this gasket and that side cover bolted on. I'll tighten it and then see where we're at for that end play. You don't want it to be sloppy where you see a lot of it. You want to just barely hear and feel it when you grab on and you pull back and forth. It's so fresh. I don't know if you're going to be able to see or hear this. I'll give it my best shot. All right. That's good money. So, I can either run the shim in the green gasket, or I could remove the shim and likely get away with the skinnier one. I'm just going to go ahead and put that up as a spare for now, and I'll run the green one. Personal preference. I'm just carefully lifting up my shim to check my timing dots one more time. Good there. Now I'm going to lubricate everything that I can before I seal it up. I was sure to lubricate the bearing on my side cover as well before I lowered it in place. Each one of these side cover bolts is getting just a little bit of red Loctite. I've had really good luck with this older container of Permatex Red. Just saying. I don't know how many engines exactly I've done with this bottle, but it's been a few. That's also why I'm running out of crank shims. Anyways, when I'm tightening and torquing my side cover bolts, I go to my opposites and I juggle around. So maybe like from here to here to here to there to here to there, something like that. I could start a different one, it doesn't really matter. I go to a whopping 18 foot-pounds. The GX200 specification is 200 to 220 inch-pounds, or 17 foot-pounds. My little guy only gets the 200, and I'm obviously a bit of an overachiever. I've not had any issues getting the bolts off on any of the engines that I've done this to. So, what works for me might also work for you. The crank holder tool makes lapping and installing your flywheel a whole lot easier. I already removed the woodruff key and did the work. I just applied a very small amount of a fine grade grinding compound. I stayed away from the end of my shaft near the oil seal. This flywheel has been mated up to numerous GX200 tapers in the past, but where this is a brand new crank, it is good practice to do this when introducing the flywheel to it, no matter what. So even if this was like a fresh stock one, alright, or a new billet one, this happens to be a used cast aluminum job. Both the flywheel and the crank are getting the super clean foam. Once that starts to dissolve, I'll hit it with the toothbrush, wipe it down, and then I'll switch to something like brake clean to really get the contaminants off. We don't want any grit around that seal, especially when you add a few thousand RPM. I can't stress that enough. Here I go above and beyond again. Anytime I use a chemical that may be corrosive or non-conducive to the physical nature of plastic or rubber, around or near plastic or rubber, I go back over it with a light water and soap solution. This might not actually be all that is in there. Sometimes I use a dish soap. I know this one says super degreaser, but it's a lot more natural than, you know, something that comes in a spray can like that. My thoughts here, that this will somewhat neutralize any of the cleaner or film that was left behind on the seal. You know, maybe some of that dries off somehow and then gets wet and reactivates and starts chewing at things again. I don't know, but I'm not taking any chances. I have my woodruff key installed already. I'm going to wipe everything down one more time and then get the flywheel torqued on. Check it out. I have this torque wrench set at 65 foot-pounds. I'm going to place one hand over here on the wrench, and I'm going to come over the engine with my body weight and press down with my elbow. It's very, very easy when you have the right tool for the job. Highly recommended. That's a good place to stop for now. This is going to be a full build, and we're going to have a lot to go over even after we install the new head. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. I want you to stay.